Lin Tion snapped back that it had only been a decoy. He hurriedly told them he'd already warned everyone not to stare at it. According to him, that thing was a heterodox creature known as the Black Goat Evil God's Egg. To put it plainly, it was just an egg, and it didn't understand human language. Go Kwang scratched his head, repeating the name under his breath. A moment later, something clicked and his eyes brightened. Since it was an egg, he wondered aloud whether that meant it could mate and produce offspring. The question instantly made the atmosphere awkward. Gaoyan flew over and smacked Go Kwang on the head, scolding him for letting his thoughts drift into nonsense right before a fight. He told him to focus and asked how he could even think about something like that, calling him a perverted goblin without hesitation. Go Kwang shot back angrily, asking how Gaoyan still had the nerve to criticize him when he'd clearly gone over to look too. As the two goblins kept bickering, Lin Tion went quiet, lost in thought. Then his expression shifted. For some reason, Go Kwang's words started to sound strangely reasonable. He realized he might not be a pure-blood goblin after all. It struck him that everything in the world could reproduce. The Black Goat Evil God's egg supposedly came from one of the 7 evil gods. Even if that story was just a legend, the fact that the egg existed at all suggested there was some truth behind it. An idea formed quickly. If he could create new life, wouldn't that make him the rightful partner of the Black Goat Goddess? In that case, it would all be completely legitimate. With that thought, Lin Tion quietly backed away toward the rear of the goblin army. Without drawing attention, he suddenly broke formation and slipped away, moving carefully toward the Black Goat Evil God's egg. Up close, it was enormous, rising like a massive tower. Worse than its size was its presence. Anyone who looked at it felt increasingly uneasy, as if their thoughts were starting to unravel. Even Lin Tion struggled to endure it. He clenched his teeth, shut his eyes tight, and told himself he had to finish this quickly. This was a path no one had ever taken before, and he would be the first. Gathering every bit of courage he had, he charged straight toward the Black Goat Evil God's egg. At the same time, the goblin army continued its slow advance. The countless monsters moved together, their heavy steps shaking the forest floor as they marched forward. After arguing for a bit, Go Kwang suddenly stopped talking. He glanced around suspiciously at the goblins behind him and asked where the boss had gone. He complained that they all looked the same and that he couldn't tell which one was in charge. Goblin swore under his breath and told him to shut up already, saying the boss had probably been driven crazy by Go Kwang's nonsense. The scene shifted to the joint encampment of the Empire and the Church. Rows of tents filled the area, fenced in and watched over by towers, while soldiers patrolled in tight, disciplined formations. Inside the command tent, King Charles II was furious, swearing non-stop and demanding to know why the scouts still hadn't returned. He wondered if they'd been killed again and cursed the goblins for it, calling it a blatant provocation. If they didn't even send envoys back, how was he supposed to know whether they intended to negotiate or fight? Unable to listen any longer, Cleen spoke up to calm him, saying His Majesty shouldn't waste his anger on goblins. Precisely because they were goblins, he added, they were capable of doing things like this. Just then, a frontline scout rushed in and reported that the goblins had arrived. Charles II sneered, saying they'd finally shown themselves, and swore to bring Alice home no matter what. He immediately led the others out of the command tent, quickly organizing the troops and preparing for battle. But as violent tremors shook the ground beneath their feet, everyone's expression grew heavy. Something felt very wrong. People stared ahead, unsettled by the strange presence that made them feel uncomfortable both physically and mentally. The scale alone was shocking. At least 100,000 goblins, along with an overwhelming number of monsters. Many couldn't believe a goblin tribe could have grown to this size in just half a year. Fear spread through the ranks. Charles II clenched his teeth and forced himself to stay calm, snapping that there was no reason to panic. They had 100,000 heavily armored soldiers, and even twice that number of monsters could still be crushed. A trembling Marquis asked about the two pitch-black objects on the battlefield, saying that simply looking at them made his skin crawl, and asking where they had come from. At that moment, the cardinal stepped forward and opened the Holy Scriptures, explaining that those were heretical creatures known as the eggs of the black goat evil god, recorded in ancient texts. He instructed everyone to avoid looking directly at them. According to the Scriptures, the black goat evil god periodically expelled such eggs, though he hadn't expected them to appear here. Even after the explanation, many were still confused. Most had never even heard of the black goat evil god, a name from ancient times. Charles II didn't dwell on it and instead asked about the Pope's whereabouts. The cardinal replied that the Pope remained at the rear, while he himself had come forward to help initiate the battle. As he spoke, he drew his sword. It was the holy sword once wielded by Alice. Originally a level 11 magic artifact, it had been split into the blade and the cross-shaped hilt due to the rarity of high-tier artifact. Now reunited, it was known as the Holy Cross Greatsword, capable of unleashing its full original power, also called the Holy Cross Sacred Sword. Charles II's expression darkened as he stared at the blade, saying quietly that it should return to its original owner. By then, Lin Tion's army had advanced into the central area of the battlefield and begun deploying formations. The Imperial army moved as well, every step and adjustment perfectly synchronized, their movements shaking the earth. Sunlight reflected off silver armor, creating a blinding glare as a powerful military presence pressed forward. On Lin Tion's side, everything was calm. They waited in silence for the enemy to approach. With a single glance, Charles II fixed his gaze on the low-level goblin standing at the very front. He asked the person beside him if that was really the one, if he was truly just a low-level goblin. The answer came back immediately. Yes, it was the same goblin they'd seen before. Clean ground his teeth, his face twisted with hatred. He would never forget what Lin Tion had said or what he had done. The idol and goddess he worshipped above all else had been defiled by a goblin. Then Charles II noticed a familiar face. Pale, flawless skin and clear azure eyes stared back at him, but the innocence once within them was gone, replaced by cold darkness. Everything else faded from his attention. He shouted for Alice, saying he had come to bring her home and ordering her to return at once. Clean called out too, asking if Princess Alice still remembered him. He reminded her of how they used to train together and how she always defeated him easily. He said that if she was willing to change her mind and stand with the Empire, they would not pursue responsibility for the previous civilian massacre. Her response came sharp and furious, telling them to shut up. She warned them not to mention those people again, saying she still had killing to do and would never go back. She told Charles II that for over 10 years, she had endured suffering to protect those people, only for them to push her toward death in the end. Those words erased the last of Charles II's hope. As he stared ahead, all that remained in his eyes was pain.